When you get to my age, you think you've seen it all. But that morning my son-in-law told me he was moving his parents into my home. That's when I knew I wasn't just losing the house, I was losing the last piece of my wife. But I had one last little welcome gift waiting for them. One they wouldn't forget. They thought some old guy couldn't fight back. But they didn't have the clue what my wife and I built deep in these woods. A secret room made for a time just like this. The sun was coming through the tall pine trees. Birds were chirping across the misty lake. I'm Robert, 68, just sitting on the porch of the cabin I built, with a hot coffee in my shaky hands. It's funny, I said to myself, how the quiet feels heavier when you don't have anyone to share it with. I looked over at the rocking chair next to me. Empty, but worn smooth from all the years she used it. Dorothy always sat there humming while she knitted. I can still smell her lavender tea in the wood. We built this house with our own 2 hands. No contractors, no blueprints, just love, sweat. And that patience you get when you believe forever actually means something. I remember how we picked this spot 25 years ago. Out in the forest. No neighbors, just peace and quiet. When Dorothy died from cancer 3 years ago, I buried her right under the maple tree out back. It was her favorite view of the lake. I still talk to her every single morning. A dusty SUV crunched up the gravel driveway. It was Emily, my only daughter. She's in her mid-30s wearing city clothes, and she looked worried. And right behind her was Kevin. Slick hair, an expensive jacket, and his phone practically glued to his hand. Hi, Dad, we brought breakfast. I managed a small smile. That's nice, sweetheart. Coffee's hot. Kevin forced a laugh. Smells like the woods brewed it. We all sat at the porch table. I could already feel the tension. Kevin put his phone down and cleared his throat. He said, Robert, we wanted to talk about the house. That word house just hung there. My house, I said. Well, technically, yes, but just hear me out. Emily and I found this amazing opportunity in town, but our apartment's way too small. My parents are retiring soon, and they'll need a place to live too. This property, it's perfect for a big family. I asked quietly, whose family? Ours, he said. You, me, Emily, my parents. One big happy home. We can fix it up, modernize it. And maybe you could move into that senior complex over by the church. You'd be close enough for visits. Emily just stared at the table. She didn't say a word. My voice was shaking, but I kept it calm. So I move out, you all move in, and I visit my own home like a guest. Kevin laughed nervously. Come on, don't think of it like that. Think of it as sharing. In that moment, I saw him for who he really was. It was the same greedy look Dorothy had warned me about the very first time she met him. She'd said, Robert, that boy's handshake is colder than this lake in December. I didn't listen then. I sure wish I had, but I just agreed politely. All right, Kevin, give me a few weeks to pack. I'll make sure everything's ready for your parents. Kevin was grinning from ear to ear. Knew you'd understand. Sir, you're a good man, Robert. He shook my hand the way a man does when he's closing a deal he didn't earn. I smiled back, but inside something old and ugly started to wake up. It wasn't anger or hate, it was sharper than that. As they left, Emily hugged me tight. Dad, I didn't want this, she whispered. I know, sweetheart. Don't you worry. I've got a little surprise for them. That night, I walked through the rooms of my house, touching the old photographs. Furniture. I can still hear Dorothy's laugh in my head. When she died, I promised I'd keep this house alive. She touched every single part of it and giving it to someone who never loved it. That's like erasing her. Then I found her old sewing box. Inside was a small brass key wrapped in a faded ribbon. A note said, for when they forget what this house means. I knew that key. It went to the locked basement door we never used. Dust was everywhere as my flashlight cut through the dark. I went down the steps. The key fit perfectly. The door opened with this long, slow groan. Inside, I saw shelves of Dorothy's sketches, letters, and unfinished paintings. And against the far wall, something was covered up. It was wood and metal, almost like a sealed room. Her handwriting on a plank said, Memory Room. She always said a house needed to protect its soul. I just thought she was being sentimental. I wasn't so sure anymore. I found old security wiring, motion sensors, speakers, even an old projector system. Dorothy had been planning a surprise for our 40th anniversary, a movie about our life, but she never got to finish it. I smiled a little. Maybe I'll finish it for her. The next couple of days, I went to see my old friend, William, who used to be an electrician. I told him I was just upgrading the house to make it safer. William helped me get the wiring up to date, hook up some smart locks, and fix that old projector. We tested the system. Lights flickered, and I heard a voice echoing through the old speakers. It was Dorothy's voice from an old tape. "Robert, if you're hearing this, we made it, didn't we? Our forever home." I just sat there in the dim basement with tears in my eyes. She left me messages in wires and wood. So I thought maybe it's only fair I leave some messages too, for those who plan on taking what isn't theirs. I set up hidden cameras, automatic lights, and voice triggers. Not to hurt anyone, just to remind them of what this place really is. The night started getting colder. The forest outside felt alive. Owls were hooting. Branches were scraping against the windows. I kept dreaming of Dorothy walking down the halls whispering, "Protect it." You ever notice how the woods can tell when something's about to change? The air gets thick like it's holding its breath. That's how it felt, like the house itself was just waiting. I finished getting everything ready, the projectors, the recordings, the locks. I wear that brass key on a necklace now. I looked at a framed photo of Dorothy and whispered, "Let's give him a welcome, darling." I could hear thunder way off in the distance. After Emily and Kevin left that morning, the silence in the house felt heavier than ever before. It was like the forest was leaning in, trying to hear the thoughts I wasn't saying out loud. I just sat by the window for hours, staring at the lake where Dorothy used to paint. I wondered if she'd approve of what I was about to do. And somehow, I felt her answer in the air. It was soft, like she was telling me it was okay. I spent the next few days pretending to sort through boxes. But what I was really doing was preparing. Dorothy's journal was my guide. Her handwriting was shaky on the yellowed pages. They were full of half-finished thoughts, sketches of the basement notes about light sensors, and recorded messages. She must have been planning something long before she passed. Reading her words, it felt like she was right there with me. More alive than ever, like she was whispering right from the pages. "Robert, remember what this place is all about." Those words stuck with me. This house was never just walls and wood. It was our memories. And I wasn't about to let greed turn it into some prize for people who never loved it. My old buddy William stopped by one evening. He looked at the mess of cables and old gear I'd dragged out of storage and just shook his head. "Planning to turn this cabin into Fort Knox," he joked. I forced a smile, hiding the real reason. "Just want to make it safer," I told him. "You never know who might wander in." He didn't ask any more questions, just helped me set up motion sensors, voice, activated speakers, and new locks I could control with my phone. I asked him to keep it on the down low. He promised he would. While we worked, I found more of Dorothy's tapes. In one, her voice was cracking up with laughter as she said, "Robert, if you're hearing this, I hope we're still in love still right here in the woods." I paused the tape and closed my eyes. "We are, sweetheart," I whispered. "We still are." The nights got colder. The woods felt different. The wind was softer, the sound slower. Every creak of the floorboards felt alive. Sometimes I thought I could hear Dorothy's footsteps walking down the hall. The old walls groaned like they were whispering. I wasn't scared. I felt watched, sure, but it was a familiar feeling, like someone was making sure I didn't chicken out. When I walked outside at night, the trees stood tall like guards, their shadows stretching long over the porch. I used to think the woods were just background noise. Now I knew they were witnesses. They remembered everything, the laughter, the arguments, the day Dorothy said, "Promise me you'll never let this place fall into the wrong hands." On the 5th day, I finished installing it all. Cameras hidden behind picture frames, voice triggers under the floorboards. And I got the old projector working again. I swapped the film with Dorothy's unfinished one, the one she wanted to play for our anniversary. The footage was raw. Her painting in the garden, her talking to the camera about love, about how a home soaks up the energy of the people who build it. "A house can be kind," she said in the video. "But if it's disrespected, it'll remind you who it belongs to." I smirked when I heard that. I didn't plan to hurt anybody. I'm not that guy. But I wanted Kevin and his family to feel what this house really meant before they tried to claim it like a prize. Emily called a few days later. Her voice was shaky. "Dad, Kevin's parents want to move in next weekend. Are you okay with that?" I told her it was fine, that I'd even make them dinner. She sounded surprised and relieved. "Thank you, Dad," she said. "You're being so understanding." I could almost feel her guilt right through the phone. I didn't want to make her feel worse. She's my daughter, caught between her heart and her duties, and I wasn't mad at her. I was mad at what greed had turned Kevin into. How easily people forget to be decent when they get too comfortable. The next week, I cleaned the whole house, dusted the shelves, and made it look perfect. But under all that calm, I was putting the pieces together for something they would never see coming. The memory room was ready. The sensors were synced, the recordings timed. Every sound, every flicker of light was set to go. Any movement. And if they tried to run, the locks would hold them for a few minutes. Long enough for them to hear. Long enough for them to remember. That night I sat out on the porch, just looking up at the stars. I started talking real quiet, like I always do before I go to sleep. "Dorothy," I said, "I know you're not the revenge type, but I think you'd want the truth. And sometimes, the truth needs a little help to come out." All of a sudden, the wind picked up, brushing past me on the porch. It felt like a gentle hand. For just a second, I swear I could smell her lavender tea. I just smiled, leaned back and whispered, "The show's about to start." They showed up on a Saturday morning. The fog was still hanging low on the trees, and the lake was perfectly still, like glass. I heard their car on the gravel before I even saw them. Emily's voice was quiet, kind of nervous, and then there was Kevin's. Loud and sharp barking orders like he owned the place. And trailing behind them were his parents, a couple of strangers who looked way too polished for this place. Their eyes were scanning everything, judging it. I just stood on the porch, smiled, and gave a little wave. My heart was heavy, but my voice didn't shake. "Welcome home," I said, and man, those words burned. They brought in their boxes and their fake laughs and this smell of expensive perfume that just didn't belong here. The cabin felt smaller as soon as they walked in. It was like the walls were shrinking away from them. Kevin slapped me on the back. "You've kept this place real, rustic," he said, looking around at the old furniture. His mom wrinkled her nose at the smell of pine. "It could use a woman's touch," she muttered. I didn't say a word. Emily gave me this weak little smile. Her eyes were begging me not to start anything. I wouldn't, not yet. I offered to make them all dinner. "You know, a final meal before I moved out." Kevin just grinned. "That's real nice of you, Robert. My parents love a good meal." He didn't even see my hands shaking a little when I poured his coffee. I wasn't nervous, though. I was just thinking about Dorothy, how she used to serve tea in those exact same cups he was holding. I could almost hear her laugh bouncing off these walls. The whole afternoon I just watched them, unpacking, moving things, criticizing everything. Every single time his dad touched one of her paintings, I'd get this sharp pain in my chest. That was the last thing Dorothy ever painted. But they just looked at it like it was some cheap junk from a garage sale. Emily snuck out to the porch when no one was looking. "Dad," she whispered. "Thanks for doing this. I know it's not easy." I looked at her, and for a second I saw that little girl who used to run around chasing fireflies right in this yard. "Just promise me one thing," I said. "Whatever happens tonight, don't you be scared." She looked confused, but she nodded. "I trust you," she said, and then she went back in. Later, when the sun started to go down, the house was glowing with this warm light. I had the table all set, candles lit, and you could smell the roasted chicken in the air. They all sat down, they ate, they laughed. But I didn't feel any of it. It was like I was watching them through a fog or something. My heart was just beating slow and steady. About halfway through dinner, I raised my glass. "To family," I said real quiet. "To the people who remember where this love started." They all raised their glasses, but I could see that little smirk on Kevin's face, hiding behind his fake smile. And that's when the first trigger went off. It was small. You almost wouldn't notice it. The chandelier flickered once. Then it was fine. His mom frowned. "Old wiring," she muttered. I just nodded. Then something clicked inside the walls. A low hum started. It sounded like an old tape starting to play. Then a woman's voice, soft at first, filled the room. It was Dorothy. "Robert, if you're hearing this, we made it, didn't we? Our forever home." Everybody just froze. Emily's fork dropped right on her plate. Kevin looked all around. "What the hell was that?" he snapped. I just kept my cool and took a sip of my drink. "Just some old memories," I said real quiet. The humming came back, but louder now, and a projector I had hidden over the fireplace flickered on. An old home movie started playing on the wall. It was Dorothy out in her garden, painting, and laughing, her eyes so full of life. "Is that your wife?" Kevin's dad asked, his voice a little softer. I just nodded. She built this house with her own 2 hands, every single part of it. She always said one day the house would speak for itself. The projector. Ben showed Dorothy, turning to the camera with a smile. "If anyone ever forgets what love means in this house, remind them, Robert." Her voice was shaky at the end. Emily started crying softly. Kevin shot up from his chair. "This is some kind of trick." Isn't it?" he yelled. "You're trying to make us feel guilty." I didn't say a word. The lights flickered again, but this time, they didn't come back on. The only light was from the projector with Dorothy's face filling the whole dark room. "This home isn't for ownership," her voice echoed. "It's for hearts that remember." Then silence, and the door behind them clicked locked. Kevin's mother gasped. His dad rattled the doorknob. "It's stuck," he yelled. I got up slowly, my cane tapping on the floor. "No," I said real soft. "It's just thinking." Then the speakers crackled to life again, this time with the sound of Dorothy's laughter. It was warm, but it echoed almost haunting. Kevin swore under his breath. "This is crazy." Emily was really crying now. She looked right at me. "Dad, what is going on?" I gave her a sad smile. "The house remembers Emily. It knows who loved it and who didn't." She took a shaky step toward me. "You're scaring them." "No," I said. "The truth is..." For a good minute, nobody said anything. Then the projector changed to a new video. It was our wedding day, 50 years ago. Dorothy was in her white dress. I was right there next to her. We were so young, so full of hope. Then her voice from the recording said, "If we ever grow apart, I pray this house will bring us back together." Just like that, the screen went dark. The power came back on and the locks clicked. Open. Suddenly the air felt lighter, almost peaceful. Kevin's parents made a run for the door, saying we were nuts. Kevin was right behind them, his face red with anger. But Emily stayed. She was quiet, her eyes filled with tears. After the sound of their car faded, down the road she finally said something. "Dad," she whispered, "I had no idea. I didn't realize how much this place meant to you." I put my arm around her. "Well, now you do. And so do they." She looked up at me, her eyes wet with tears. "You didn't want revenge, did you?" I shook my head. "No, honey. I just wanted them to hear your mother's voice one last time." She just cried on my shoulder for a long time. I held on to her, really held her for the first time in years. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt alive, like it was forgiving us. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees like they too. Mom understood. When she finally left, she kissed me on the cheek. "You were right, Dad," she said. "This is your home. Always." I watched her car's taillights disappear down the road. For the first time, in I don't know how long, I felt peace. And instead of all that pain, I turned out the light, sat down in Dorothy's old chair, and whispered into the quiet room, "We did it. Love." We made sure they remembered. The wind in the trees sounded peaceful, like it was all over. And deep in the woods, I heard an owl. It wasn't sad, it sounded like a soft goodbye. The next morning, the sun came up over the lake. Sunlight streamed through the pines and warmed up the whole cabin. I woke up early, like I always do. For a second, I forgot anyone was even here last night. But the chairs were still moved around. The candles were half gone, and a wine glass was knocked over. It felt like waking up from a weird dream. Far away, but also very real. I just sat at the table listening to the fridge hum and the old house creaking. It felt like the house could finally breathe again. The first bit of sun hit Dorothy's picture on the mantel. Her smile looked real. "You did good, love," I whispered. They finally listened. Later on, Emily came back by herself. You could tell she'd been crying, but she seemed calm. I hadn't seen her that calm in years. She walked through the house real slow, touching the walls, the furniture, all the little things her mom carved. "I never really saw it before," she said. "How much of her is still in this place?" I smiled and gave her a little wooden box. Inside was Dorothy's journal, the one that got me through the last few weeks. "She would have wanted you to have this," I said. Emily opened it so carefully, like the pages were going to fall apart. A few tears dripped onto the paper. "Dad, I can't take this," she whispered. "Yes, you can," I told her. "Because now you remember. That's all she ever wanted." We sat there for hours and just talked. We really talked about Dorothy, about how life used to be before everything got so crazy and greedy. Emily told me she was going to fix things, work on her marriage, stop treating love like some kind of business deal. I told her the only thing that matters is being able to forgive. When she left that night, she gave me a real hug and said, "I'll be back next week. Maybe I'll stay for a bit." I just nodded. But I knew the house would be empty when she got here. That night I packed a small bag. Just some clothes, my old photo album, and that brass key Dorothy left for me. I walked through the cabin one last time. Every spot had a memory. The burn on the counter from her trying to make jam, the scuff mark on the floor where our old rocking chair used to be, the wall where we marked Emily's height every year. I stopped and looked in the mirror. I barely recognized myself. I looked older, sure, but I felt peaceful. I whispered to myself, Mitch's time. I walked out into the cold night air. The woods were so quiet. It was the kind of quiet that feels holy. I stood under the maple tree where we buried Dorothy's ashes. I put my hand on the ground and said my last goodbye. You kept your promise, honey, I said softly. This house won't forget you. I left the brass key right there, pushed it into the dirt next to her. The wind started to pick up a little, blowing leaves around my feet. It felt like she was telling me, it's okay, Robert, you can go. When I got to the end of the road, I looked back. The cabin already looked smaller, like it was sinking back into the woods. I turned one last time and smiled. I didn't need to own it. I'd already lived here, loved here, and I protected it. Some houses you keep forever. Others you just remember. This place did its job. As I walked away, I heard the porch swing started creaking all on its own, and in that noise, I swear I could hear her laugh. I didn't look back. I just whispered it out. Good night, Dorothy. Then, somewhere behind me, deep in the woods, the lights in that old cabin flickered one final time like a heartbeat trying to say something.